And we're start to be live. Well, the attendees are already joining us. Hi, everyone. I see familiar names. We will start soon. Just we'll give it a couple of minutes chance to other registered participants to join. I remind that we are live on YouTube and Facebook. There will be links soon here in the chat. You can use it. So you can make your watch party if you want, or you can copy it to your social media or your friends and families. And
maybe Olga, can you tell us a few words about the audience and who is listening typically?
Yeah, the audience, typically, we usually have two groups of audience, entrepreneurs and investors. I think the majority today will be entrepreneurs from Ukraine, but not only from Ukraine, usually it's wider like a region, especially today we have not Ukrainian or not Ukrainian language discussion, so is wider geography, but mostly Europe, I think. Yeah. This is mostly the audience. Okay, I suggest to start. Hi, everyone. Hello to our panelists, to those who are watching us on Zoom or other platforms. Here is me, Olga Afanasyeva, the CEO of Ukrainian Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, UVCA. And this is our event together with the company Wirex, that where we are happy to see you all. And we will talk about fintech today as a disruptive technology for financial institutions. You're very welcome to write your questions here in the chat or in the Q&A session, and I will address them during our discussion or at the end of our discussion, like whenever is appropriate. So feel free. It will make our chat more interactive, and your, like hard questions are very welcome as well, but I will make them softer. So I'm very happy to present our distinguished speakers today. So we have Jean-Francois Groff, the CEO at Mobino today. Hi, Jean-Francois. We have John Hucker, the Chief Ecosystem Officer at Elliott Capital. Hi, John.
Hello.
We have Serhii, Shatskyi, the head of program management at the National Bank of Ukraine. This is the central bank of our country, for those who don't know. Hi, Serhii. And we have Ruslan, Kolodyazhnyi, the CTO and head of R&D at Wirex R&D here in Ukraine. So let's start with the short round of introductions of your companies and your role in that companies. Like, what do you do? What is your focus? And what is your what is your role, let's say, in today's discussion? Let's start with the order that how I see you. So Jean-Francois, if you don't mind.
Hello, Olga, and thanks again for the kind invitation. Happy to see you all. Serhii, hello, and to the audience. So I'm calling here from Geneva in Switzerland. It's a country where I've done 5 different businesses until today. And my latest business is called Mobino. We created a mobile payment system that, contrary to a lot of the startups, does not work with cryptocurrencies. It works with, normal currencies. This payment system is very convenient. It allows peer-to-peer payment, payment in shop, online payment, all the usual things that now are commonplace. But if you talked about that 7, 8 years ago, it was not so common. So we have done that. Gradually, this became adopted by many banks. And today it is the standard digital payment in Switzerland. Like basically all of the competing services have merged into one. It is called Twint. and every bank and every Swiss merchant is using it. So we have become the national standard. I am today trying to market the system in African countries where there is a lot more demand for digital payment because simply they don't have convenient and cheap options in many places. But of course, it depends on network connectivity. So I'm also advising the United Nations on how to help connect the remaining 4 billion people of the world. We have connected 4 billion until today to the internet, which is pretty impressive of the telecom industry, but 4 billion more need to be connected safely and cheaply. So that's me.
Thank you, Jean-Francois. The next, I would like to pass the word to John. We first met like 2 or 3 years ago in Davos during the World Economic Forum. You were the speaker at Ukraine House. So you know something about Ukraine. And can you tell more about your roles? Because Elliott Capital is not the only thing that you're involved with.
Yeah, I guess part of the theme, actually, the Ukraine House was another speaker was Don Tapscott, who's a fellow, not only Canadian, but he's also from my hometown here of Toronto, where I'm taking a summer break at the moment. And I was there actually in a large part representing the story from Switzerland, which really has a lot to do with fintech, but also other topics around innovation. And a few years ago, what brought me to Switzerland after I did an MBA at Oxford in the UK was wealth management. I came from a really strong wealth management background, a more traditional finance background. And about 6 years ago, I started the first of the 2 major hats I'll mention, which was called the Swiss Finance and Technology Association. And that's where this idea of ecosystem and chief kind of orchestrator around that started to come up. And actually, I think it was probably about 4 years ago, Mobino, and I'm just blanking on the original name, actually won the first Swiss fintech pitch that we did, which was the really early days of trying to foster that ecosystem and show people a few ways that you could inspire and develop connections. And I think really what was great about that was not only have we been successful along with a lot of other key stakeholders in helping to see that grow over the last 5 years, but along the way I got to experiment a lot with ideas around, let's say, the natural forces of people and businesses and a lot of what's going on with the digital transformation. And so 5 years ago, I left Credit Suisse and started to work with serial entrepreneurs, family offices, corporations, even governments as well, helping them connect what I like to describe as the company life cycle. So if you think about the idea that company life cycles are getting shorter and technology is really enabling a lot of disruption, whether you're an entrepreneur, a large company, or kind of tapping back into my earlier career, if you're a family business, how can you use these new types of ecosystem engagements? How can you work with entrepreneurs like Jean-Francois? How can investors play a role that evolves within all of that? So that's really what I advise and do myself within Elliott Capital.
Thank you, John. Serhii is representing the the state body of Ukraine. Serhii, tell us more about your role in the central bank and the focuses that are currently in front of you.
Okay, thank you. Right now I have a program with the cashless economy here in the National Bank of Ukraine. It's a box with the different projects which are united by the aim of course, cashless development in the country, cashless payments, and also we have like more all other projects like digital financial services development in Ukraine for distance identification, for changing standards and platform for payments, and also for implementation of Payment Service Directive 2 in Ukraine law, and so on. Also, we have project to create and to approve fintech strategy for 2025. I put the link in the chat. It's so much that today we announced that it was approved by board of NBU. Previously, we discussed it with the market and with other state entities. So right now it's on the web. You can see and read. There is 3 documents inside of it. First is strategy of fintech development with the roadmap. Second is the concept of sandbox, which will be in Ukraine, hopefully when we will have voted from the parliament and applied changes in law for having National Bank of Ukraine, all these things. And the third is the study program, mini MBA for the banks and companies in Ukraine for PSD2 and for all fintech stuff. So this is overall.
Thank you, Serhii. I'm sure we will talk more about the sandbox plans and the strategy and the plans for this regarding the strategy of the central bank. Now let's turn to Ruslan.
Yeah, hi everyone. Really nice to meet you guys on this conversation. So I'm a CTO and like a head of R&D of Wirex, looking after all technology and kind of recreating the whole technology for our product, and that's our product is working in fintech sphere, and it's based on innovations and disrupting of financial services. So the technology is the main part of that. And we have here in Ukraine, in Kyiv, super skilled R&D center, which I'm leading, and we have more like we have near 200 people here, which developing Wirex products, which are as a products related to change the. It's a kind of platform that changes the landscape of payments, the landscape of currencies, and it works across the world. Historically, we grown up from the cryptocurrencies, maybe someone of you know, but right now we considering ourselves as a fintech company, as a platform which works with more than 40 currencies, whether it's fiat currencies or cryptocurrencies across the world. And we have products in B2B, we have products in B2C, with serving private persons and legal entities in Europe right now, in APAC region, which is successfully running, and looking forward to scale our main product across the world. My focus is to change kind of the landscape of finance. And here is my team, R&D, was successfully, I think, doing that and growing our product. And within such kind of discussion, it's really cool that such things happening, and we can put our input. I can put my input and maybe burn the idea in someone's head to disrupt financial landscape more actively. It's kind of moving right now, and thanks for our national bank is moving pretty much faster than it's been moving last years. But with such collaborations, let's share our ideas and do it much more faster.
Yeah, thank you, Ruslan. Well, while you start talking about Wirex, so it's not Ukrainian company, well, obviously, but the R&D is located in here. How did that happen, and like why Ukraine, and how does it feel, and how does it work to basically develop the fintech company, the new bank, from the country where this product does not operate, as far as I understand?
Yeah, that's a super cool question. Actually, just even because it mainly Ukraine considered as a offshore software development company with a kind of little number of products that are pretty much successful. And it's a really good and good case when The product being created not kind of only in Ukraine. The product being created in cooperation between Ukrainian engineers and London headquarters. So we are single product company, but historically started to work and started the development from Ukraine. And obviously, just because Ukraine has one of most advanced technology school and most advanced engineers, which kind of proves that we have kind of strong offshore development services here in Ukraine. So long story short, the product started as a MVP, as an idea near 4 or 5 years ago. And as we're talking right now about Fintech and how it's big, and so 5 years ago, it was kind of just an idea in a lot of in heads of a lot of people, and that was only like one of them, and it's started to grow and grown with a huge speed and scale it across the world, and turned right now and growing right now into complete Fintech platform, as I said, B2B and B2C, which as it is right now, developed and started the development and developing right now completely in Ukraine and supporting Ukraine and works across the world.
Thank you, Ruslan. My next question is to all the speakers. So when you're working like with your company or when you're working with your portfolio or partner companies, do you see the difference in the demand of different types of your services in the markets of different countries? Like and what is this difference? Let's talk about this like geographical like peculiarities of different markets. Maybe Ruslan, you can continue, or Jean-Francois, then John to join.
Yeah, I can continue if guys don't mind, but maybe it's better to Jean to start the conversation.
I don't have much to say on that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ruslan. Go ahead.
Well, maybe I can take a stab there. I think Switzerland's an interesting location. It's a small country. It's very international. It has very attractive, let's say, high-value customers, but it's also a very high-cost environment as well. So what we see a lot of, let's say, in Switzerland itself with the local startups is that they're trying very carefully to navigate a risk-averse culture and a small home market. Very big global ambitions, as Jean-Francois is a great example of. And yeah, they face a number of hurdles, although a number of advantages. And so, for example, they're looking for nearshore partners where they can develop a really close team relationship. And I've heard countless times great Ukrainian collaboration stories and very deep collaborations, not just nearshoring, but really part of a virtual team and even more. And when we look the other way, sorry, to finish that off, Swiss companies, if they're looking to stay in their home market, that's one thing. But what we really find is interesting is companies that are looking to go abroad. And we help them make connections, meet more international investors, understand the different cultural dynamics of doing business as they grow. And that's not just in our own work, but also with groups like other associations, government trade promotion organizations, and in the spirit of an ecosystem, a lot of partners of all different sorts in these international locations. And that's really the only way it's possible given the early stage dynamic of it. On the flip side, what we see a lot is Switzerland is a super attractive marketplace. And it's a nice small target that you can aim for. And so we have lots of different countries trying to make a case about, for example, nearshoring. And I think few struggle to make as good of a consistent and legitimate claim to build a relationship there as Ukraine has, not just with venture capital, but with IT companies and with entrepreneurs as well and others. There's also cases where we can learn from institutions in the Ukraine, more digital banks and things like that. And yeah, when it comes to coming into Switzerland, we really have to focus on what are the companies that are consistent. They have a really strong value proposition, and they have the patience also to help figure out how can we work with this very attractive marketplace and go from there.
Yeah, now I can relate to some of the points that you made, John. As I said, well, I'm originally from France, but I've done my whole adult life, my whole career in Switzerland. And one thing I found very, very attractive in this country, if you are a business person and an entrepreneur, is that there's a lot of openness, there's a lot of freedom to operate, there's a lot of freedom to bring in new ideas, even if the local population is very risk averse and very conservative. So I think if you start a company in Switzerland, you can find the right talent, you can find the freedom. There's a lot of excellent universities, and also the fact that the country is multilingual and multicultural is very important. It's excellent to make a product work in this environment. If it works in Switzerland, it will work all over Europe and maybe all over the world. So that's good. On the other side, it's true that it's a high cost environment. So very often, especially when you're doing software, you get very, very talented people out of places like Ukraine, Belarus, Romania, which are not far away culturally and temporally. So it's easier to do business with Ukraine, for example, than to do business with India or with the Philippines. So that's a choice that a lot of companies are making. And generally, from my experience, I've been very satisfied.
I can add on this point as well. My opinion, considering even situations that we have right now with online world, when everyone got online and 90% of time doing online stuff and having meetings online, the topic of country and the residence became, I think, as a secondary point and point of working only with regulation, and the product became became worldwide and doesn't have actually the specific point which can be allocated as a country or as a specific region, because having you can build the product or wherever you can be, but the only thing that you must obtain is a good team, is a cool team that has appropriate skills and has appropriate motivation to achieve that. And from that point, companies can choose the regulatory environment to expand across the world their services. And as maybe a lot of people which here on the call they're doing business in one area and doing the development, the growth of that business technically and as a product in another area. So my thought is that looking forward to the future, the border will be blurry between these points, and maybe even considering that every country and every jurisdiction will apply the same rules as, for example, Ukraine applies PSD2 rules and so on and so forth. The rules will be consistent between regions and between countries. And that might be the case where there will be no point to select country or region to set up the regulatory environment for your product, and you can operate across the world without borders. It's a dream of entrepreneurs, I think, even especially fintech, because fintech super regulated even for now.
Yeah, well, interesting points. Thank you for sharing. And I totally share your vision regarding like blurred borders between countries and no geographical limits, but like having it more about the product, about the company itself. I mean, the solution of that company provides. And there was also interesting like keywords that I would like to appeal is openness. And if we talk about Ukraine, there were a lot of things that have been made with the with the management of the central bank here, like a lot of reforms, and now there is the strategy. There is a link sent by Serhii in the chat. If you want, you can check. I think there is an English version also, right?
It will be later, I think.
Yeah, it will be okay. It will be later. So yeah, like long story short, there were a lot of things that changed, but what else is like planning to be changed, and what are the challenges that are left here, and what are the demands of the society, of people here in Ukraine, in order to make their financial life easier and to have available products like Switzerland and in other countries. Maybe Serhii, you can elaborate a little bit more about that with links to the strategy, for example.
So we have, I think, partly we already see a lot of some changes in the Ukrainian legal field, and also with the kind of documents which we issue on the market, which we do not like one by only National Bank of Ukraine, but we do it with market. We discuss it, and we do several rounds of discussion with all who are who has a need for the document which regulate one or another business line. Yeah, so we do a lot changes, and we did already for the currency requirements. We right now finalized, and as I know, put it the document which says about financial services, because we became a mega regulator after 1st of July with the split, and now we are regulating all financial companies, not only banks as before. And on the final stage of improvement inside of National Bank of Ukraine, the law of which will implement PSD2 directive, which will have the name law of the payment services. So for all these changes together with the whole strategy for the financial market development, not only Fintech, which was announced in the beginning of the year, we see and we know what to do and what should be done, again, because of this dialogue with the companies, dialogue with the banks and the players. We know what should be done for comfort and stable development of the market. So this is our point. This is point that we want to help our players, which are Ukrainian companies. We want to help companies from abroad to come here, as it's happened in the world, that from the I don't know, strict regulation, central banks become more and more playing the consultative form of weighing business and weighing doing of the external customer. Yeah, for us, it's financial market players. So we are trying to build and to do this consultative form and consultative way of dialogue with the companies, just to see and just to show the effect that from this synergy.
Thank you, Serhii. I have the question from the audience, Dennis. When open banking to Serhii, when open banking is expected to be implemented in Ukraine, is it going to be part of PSD2 or done in a separate step?
So the requirements for open banking and for open API will be by this, again, by this law should be designed by central bank together with the market until the 2023. So there will be the timeline when it will be should be started to work. But of course, before we need to make sure that that standards of open banking is at the place, and we will do all our best to make it happen. And it's a part of this PSD2 implementation. Hopefully, it can start earlier than 2023. When we discuss it together with the market players, with the banks, there was a lot of banks which already do like Open API, but separately for some players. It's not Open API of the PSD2 form, but again, it's almost the beginning. And there was banks which were very actively asking to create working group to make it happen. So when I will put this document to the parliament, then after when NBU will put this document to the parliament, then we will be able to start to work with the banks, the biggest one and the active one, who will help us to create the standards. So this is my answer.
Yeah, and do you appeal to the international experts, like here today, for example? Can they be part of the working group if they want, of course?
Yes, of course. We will have like a first round, like the inviting letter with the open gate. Then after we will have some kind of we will receive some letters with intention to be the participants. Of course, why not? We are open. The only thing that it should be really productive work, not just to be like a part of it, because there is no sense, I guess.
Okay, Ruslan, what is the status of the of Wirex product, of Wirex activity, like fintech activity with Ukraine? Like, what are the plans and what are the problems that, or maybe it's just not an interesting market for you now, or maybe there are like problems that need to be solved. Can you share something from your practice, and maybe we can find a solution today?
Yeah. Good question, and I think it's a really important question for us because we are mainly based in Ukraine, kind of the main part of company based in Ukraine, and we were looking for approach in Ukraine market for like a long time, and I have a continuous discussion with National Bank as well, and the market about the changes that may happen in Ukraine in terms of regulation, because that's only the main reason that stops a lot of companies to come to Ukraine and a lot of new fintech products to grow in Ukraine because of strict rules, because of ability, because of need and ability to work in more techy way that fintech works right now in the world. And regulation is not only related to the how company work, how financial company can be established and licensing and so on and so forth, but regulation as well related to the tech component. So for example, how to operate within the product, whether it can be cloud solution or it should be only kind of on-premise. Sorry for such touchy language, but that's the point right now. And a lot of financial institutions as well want to develop and partner with fintech companies and approach the market, but the overall structure of the regulation can be enhanced in order to bring more flexibility into way how the product can be combined, and how the product can be combined from the user perspective, from how user can feel the product. For example, the question about digital signature and bank ID, which continuously discuss, where we have continuously discussions on the market. It will, for example, this question with digital signature and bank ID, and aligning onboarding processes, onboarding of users with kind of European practices, will give Ukrainian market really huge growth and attention from internal business, from internal companies which want to acquire more users and grow fintech technology, and global companies which are developing the worldwide product, because our company is committed to develop not kind of the local product, but the worldwide product, which can, where a person can have a Wirex card and get the Wirex card wherever it can be, whether it will be the resident of Ukraine, whether it will be the resident of European Union, and use any currency across the world. For example, in Ukraine, using and having obtaining the accounts as well, it's a point of regulation, and it's point of discussions and latest changes where the National Bank Ukraine made like a lot of flexibility for obtaining account in different currencies, for obtaining the foreign account. It answers the question, and it shows that the demand is huge, and overall fixing regulation in establishing companies and operating of companies, and improving the regulation of establishing the product and operating the product. It's two really equally important questions. And it's not only related to Ukraine, it's related for most countries, but in Ukraine, it's a huge opportunity and huge task to accomplish, which kind of Serhii is doing right now.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. John, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we touched on a few of the pieces, but to try and tie it together, what I've seen is there's a lot of interest from a lot of stakeholders to open up banking and do things like APIs, and whether it's a new disruptive player that figures out a platform that can pull that together, or a tech company that forces it, or banks that finally agree it's in the customer or their best interest to start to do that. I don't really know, but I think what we see a lot is that it's a case where, like blockchain and things like that, regulation from traditionally what we're seeing as industry verticals is now converging, and it's a very complicated situation to figure out how that's all going to evolve. So, I mean, touching on the crisis, and especially the financial crisis that we're in the middle of right now, I think this is the kind of opportunity to be figuring out if we should be using that as an opportunity to address this sort of thing.
Yeah, thanks for the add-on. And well, considering that Switzerland is one of the most developed fintech, has one of the most developed fintech ecosystems, let's brainstorm and talk more about what helped Switzerland become the leader in fintech, not only in the traditional banking activity, but also in these modern financial technology services, and which lessons can be applied to Ukraine, of course, adapted, but like what can be used here as well. And here I mostly appeal to John and Jean-Francois.
Yeah, I'll try.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe I can try and do a few quick stabs, and Jean-Francois, you can really correct it as the entrepreneur. What I think Switzerland did really well, and has done well for quite a long time, is get its fundamentals to a strong position. We talked about its adaptability, the market dynamics. There's so many things that we can talk about: the stability, the legal system, tons of great things. I think what they've done reasonably well at is creating free space and an open mind for something like the Crypto Valley to pop up. And I think also there's a natural openness for fintech in general to start to evolve very quickly. There's a big financial industry. There is a desire to see more entrepreneurship. And I think there is, although a bit reserved, a genuine interest to speed up a bit and to be a part of this digital revolution, and hopefully in a leading way. My one kind of opportunity to improve, or something that Ukraine as let's say a more ambitious country that's playing catch up a bit more, when you're building those strong fundamentals, when you're moving quickly to develop the future, I think it's important to maintain that balance of pace, but also stability. And yeah, all the more so. I think Singapore does a great job of that, other countries as well, but that's the kind of dynamic that we've seen with Switzerland a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about Switzerland compared to other countries, it comes back to what I said earlier. I found a lot of willingness to let new ideas come in, willingness to let entrepreneurs do something. One very interesting conversation I had when I first came into the country and wanted to create my first business, I was asking a lot of questions. Am I allowed to do this? What kind of paperwork do I need to do that? What if next year we want to do this or that? What will happen to us? And the person I was talking to was a legal advisor, was a bit puzzled by all my questions. And at some point he interrupted me and said, "Young man, you're on the wrong track. We have a principle in this country called freedom of enterprise. So don't bother thinking of all the things that you are not allowed to do. You are allowed to do whatever you want. And when you do something wrong, we will tell you. But don't expect, like you would do in France, to get 50 different permits from 20 different agencies before you even lift a finger or hire an employee." So I think if other countries should take example on Switzerland, it's the freedom of enterprise and the light touch on regulation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
There was another point, a more general point I wanted to make earlier when Ruslan was discussing, the various regulations across the world. When I started my fintech business in 2011, I, of course, learned very quickly about all the differences in regulations and all the subtleties of laws that sometimes contradict each other, even in one country. And we had to work around that. We had to be creative with, okay, taking one little bit of regulation here, another bit there, and say, look, we're doing something new, but it looks a little bit like banking, but we don't take deposit. And it looks a little bit like payment, but we are more fluid than what the bank would do. And is it okay? And when I asked the regulator, is it okay? With a good plan, with showing them I had an understanding of what is the intent behind the rule. Even if we worked with old rules, we could still adapt them to the new world. So that was okay. And I was also thinking that I would have a lot of trouble with regulations in various countries. But as I discovered these regulations, I realized that was not the big issue. The biggest issue was not regulatory, it was cultural. And when you see now we have some hindsight, you can see the pace of adoption of digital payment systems in various countries, even within rich economies like Europe. You see a totally different picture based on the culture of the country. We had a very similar solution that popped up in Denmark to what we were doing in Switzerland. In Denmark, after 1 year, everybody was using it. They had 30% of all merchants accepted mobile payments. In Switzerland, same solution, same kind of vibe, but the people just didn't want it. They said, "Oh, we are waiting. We are waiting until," I'm talking to merchants, okay? "We are waiting until a system gets established. There are 3 or 4 new systems on the market. We just wait and see until it emerges who is established." So of course, with that culture, a startup cannot survive because only the bank and the rich companies can afford to wait So, and we saw the same problem in Germany, where it's actually the population that was more worried about security and worried about not holding, the banknotes in their hands. So it didn't catch up quickly in Germany, but it caught like very quickly in London when digital payments were made easy. So I was very naive in the beginning. I thought, oh, we build a great product that every human being wants to use because with the bank service, and we do something better. But the culture can make or break your product success. So more so than the regulation, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, talking about Ukraine and summarizing a little bit, I think the specifics here in the country is that we have definitely issues with the fundamentals, which John mentioned, like the legal system. There are like issues with courts and well, with the fundamental things that should be solved. But as Jean-Francois said, is the matter of culture as well. So regarding the culture, we have from what we see during the last, I think, like 7 or even 10 years, is a lot of innovation power and innovation desire, and people are open and want to do something new. They want to change the system, and they like being creative and talented in tech. They, like use these skills in order to build something new in fintech in particular. And so let's talk a little bit about traditional banking and financial technologies. Like all of you are working with entrepreneurs, and all of you have or are working with the banks as well. And in particular, John and Ruslan have previously been working in traditional banks. Yeah, Ruslan, you worked in Ukraine, in some of Ukrainian banks. John, you worked for UBS in the wealth management. And definitely there are differences between traditional banks and entrepreneurs and startups in the sector, in fintech. So, well, differences are kind of obvious, but my question is like, what is similar apart from the sector that unites these two sectors, these two, like universes that should live in peace actually, if we want to develop fintech in the world and not only in certain countries?
I guess I'll go first then. I think first of all, it's the shared sort of goal, shared passion deep down. These are people that ultimately appreciate the industry. I think they have sort of two sides of the coin type of view. One side appreciates the past and is trying to maintain that stability. And of course, the entrepreneurs are trying to recognize the future and the potential and race forward into that. And I think what they both also increasingly share is an understanding of the full spectrum of options between the two groups. It's not just about disruption, which is what we heard, say, 5 years ago. There was a lot of talk of, oh, will fintech disrupt? And then there's been a few years of no, it will be collaborate. And I think the truth is, again, a bit of a contradiction. There is some disruption. There is a lot of collaboration. And when you look across the spectrum, there's investments, there's joint ventures, there's spin-outs, acquisitions, all kinds of fun stuff going on. So it's really become an interesting space to be trying to figure it out.
Ruslan, can you add something?
Yeah, just wanted to add. My point is that between fintech as a startups, like a number of startups and companies that operate on a finance landscape, but in much another ways than traditional finance and banks do. It's a huge difference between them. And there is no point to look for similarities. Maybe the only similar thing, from my opinion, is that they are both working in one sphere. But that just only because the differences are huge. Starting from the culture of people that working working in these two different dimensions, and moving to the technology and the way how the product is considered, and even the experience of using the product is considered. And that's not kind of a problem, I think, that's an opportunity. And as John said, not rather disrupt, but disrupt the legacy services and collaborate in order to create the value, the real value, which can be delivered through new technology, not the new fancy things that that we can kind of hear buzzwords, but the technology which is much reliable and faster than traditional finances, and that can fix and enhance vital finance services, such as kind of obtaining an account, doing a transaction, sending a payment, or sending a transfer to your family or friends. And with collaboration and partnership, that's the only kind of model that can be applied here in order to make these differences that I mentioned work together and move forward the whole industry. And the third secret sauce above of that, and kind of the person or the subject or the point that can move closer both these parties, is a national regulator, which should be the best friend of each side.
Yeah, thank you. I want to remind those who are watching us on social media here in Zoom that you still have an opportunity, like you still have a few minutes to ask the questions in the Q&A section or under the video if you're watching us on the YouTube or Facebook. And my next question is, currently it has become trivial during the recent months, but still is one of my favorites. Which opportunities did this Corona situation open for your investment activity or for your entrepreneurial journey? Like, how do you see this new life, and which chances did you get while being in this outbreak or quarantine?
Well, on my side, I actually did not see a lot of change because we were already in a kind of industry where people work remotely on a routine basis. But it was very interesting, despite, of course, the tragic deaths. But it was interesting to see that when all of society is forced to take a new approach, people tend to appreciate a new kind of life. If you have to teach your kids for a month, you then appreciate the work that the teacher is doing every day, and probably you will not shout at the teacher so much next time. And I think, in general, for the benefit of the world, we should do 1 month of quarantine every year without the fear component. It would be very beneficial. And also, no airplanes. I love this.
Yeah, I can add on this point that Corona times just confirmed that Fintech and the way how our product and similar companies that operating in they're trying to make everything digital, that this model is super sustainable, and it makes everyone much more safer, considering this situation that happens between in people interaction. When you can remotely obtain the account, when you can remotely have a card, and when you can do the payment without any kind of interaction with people, right now in Corona time, it's super valuable because you should deal with the people itself. And further, it confirms the overall topic of having fintech industry and the development and the vector of finance development, that everything will go digital. And if someone from banks or from someone from financial companies were still kind of guessing whether it's do the digital transformation, whether it's obtain digital services in the company, whether it's go remote or doing something that can be automated or humanless or so on and so forth. Right now, it's kind of not the point of guessing and thinking about it. It's the point of doing an action and applying actions on that. And that's the main opportunities, and that's the main kind of kick off for everyone. That not the CEO or CTO making the decision right now to make things happen in doing digital services or creating fintech company or disrupting the financial services. But the coronavirus made the decision without the clue of this kind of super cool roles of the companies.
Yeah.
I would add also with no investments in NBU, but in the same time, I would add that there is two main points after this quarantine and virus, which I saw personally. First is the speed of connection between different parties inside of regulator or outside. The Zoom meetings or virtual meetings are much more easier, quicker, and better discussion, as I see, and the better result it is. And the second, which I like, that the solution which should be made upon digitalization, approved and come into force much more quicker. For example, when we put on the table a couple months ago the decision to do the changes in AML procedures for banks and non-banks right now will be also after 1st of July. For the remote distance identification, I think a year ago we would have a lot of conservative comments, questions, and so on. But in this case, it was not like this. It was just why you allow so few. Let's allow much more. So, but yes, as the project was started last May, and we did a lot of job to see how it done in Europe and so on and so on. So we do it step by step. But anyway, it's like an example that management and everybody understand that such changes should be done much more quicker than before. Thank you.
So it's really boosted.
Yes, I have noticed that as well, that people are more focused when they are sitting in front of the computer and they cannot, just chat with the coffee machine. So I see the impact that in some companies, managers have said, hey, we were afraid that people would work at home and just be distracted all the time. But it's not the case, because they want to get things done quickly and then take care of their kids. So that's actually super positive. And I'm actually starting a new company which will create which is revealing a product early next year to help with the human side of telepresence. So more on this later.
John, did you saw some positive effect on investment activity or other things that you do?
Yeah, I mean, the investment activity, you sort of have to wait out a few more months to see all of it, but there has been a continued positive trend, and I don't think it's caused huge problems. It has disrupted a lot of the traditional ways that people connect. So conferences, business trips, things like that, hackathons. That's been really good for our business at Fintech Plus. We worked with the Israeli government in the spring to do a roadshow for them where we showcase 20 of their top fintech companies. And the reason I mention that is you can really see quickly how Zoom meetings and broadcasting events and doing stuff like that actually does a very good job if done well. It gets very quickly up to sort of a broadcast quality of production. But at the same time, what I noticed, especially with like stock exchanges and things like that during Corona, you do have digital infrastructure that has sort of critical vulnerabilities. And whether it's environmental risk or human risk with a pandemic like this, yes, digital is great, but I think we don't want to forget too much of the other risks involved. And yeah, so for example, the Israelis were here to talk a lot about cybersecurity, weren't so interested in crypto. And I think we can get caught up in a certain perspective and forget that we need a more balanced set of things as we innovate and move forward. Not that digital isn't great.
Thanks for sharing. And it will be almost the last question. So fintech is not only about like financial component, it's also about technology. So what technology is or which technologies are the one that you believe in, like whether it's artificial intelligence developments, blockchain, maybe automation of the processes, like what is the fan of probably?
I think the machine learning and the mass treatment of data by machines that exploit a lot of the fine-grained data will create a lot of opportunities. Some people have been doing machine learning and big data in finance for decades, and these are the traders. You know, it's often said that 80% of transactions on stock markets are done by robots and algorithms, and these algorithms have evolved over the last 30 years from heuristics when you say, okay, please buy when the stock has gone down 5% and then up 10, that means it's a good signal and you can buy. These were programmed by humans, but now the humans are stepping away and it's the machines deciding for themselves what are the best ways to optimize the outcomes. And you see machines fighting machines to get the best trades. So what you see in this very narrow field of hyper specialists, you know, doing the advanced trading, you will see more and more happen for everyday life. And people will not realize that whatever advice they're getting, or in fact, today, whatever advertisement you're reading has been decided by a robot already. And it is creeping up in our lives in such a fluid way that the best science fiction writers thought we would rise against robots. We will not. We will absolutely love what they're doing for us.
I can add on this point. I have three favorite vectors of development of technology, and I can explain why. So running the fintech company, where one of main parts of the product is blockchain. Obviously, I think blockchain is one of the main and most promising things and technologies that can be applied not only to fintech, but to any other company or any other.
Something with connection.
I think, yeah, Ruslan is frozen.
Sphere of business and right, but on creating the value and, for example, launching such things as stable coins and digital currencies that backed by companies as Libra doing that right now, and so on and so forth. So right now is a time for products that have real value. The second technology is machine learning that Jean-Francois said, and artificial intelligence. And that's quite interesting thing that when we created the technology, but we can, in some cases, we don't have a clue as a humans what happens when we can train this machine learning model and how it produces the results. And this kind of magic, which should be as well developed across companies and understood better and apply it to the specific businesses, because right now my opinion is still at the beginning of the path, because right now it looks like a magic, and that's the main point. And the third is not only the third technology, not something new and fancy and as a blockchain and artificial intelligence, but something that connects and joins companies and businesses. It's a cloud technology. It's moving to the cloud computing, all spheres, and especially fintech. Right now, we see that fintech sphere relies on the cloud. Now it's a time to traditional finances rely on the cloud and have an ability to be agile and build things faster. And we see that more and more other businesses, for example, gaming as well, right now will trying to sit in the cloud. When we will not be able to run something on our laptops or run something on servers as it's standing in the next room after us, but just use our devices, like a mobile device and laptops or something else, what it will be, don't know, to have an ability to consume and execute without the borders. And that's the point, which is not something new, as I said, but the technology that should be applied across the world much with quicker, with higher speed. And the only step which is left is to change minds in some businesses and change the way of understanding of it in some lower points, in some legacy stuff. So that's what I think about it.
Thank you, Ruslan.
Okay,
John?
I would
Yeah.
maybe John, yeah.
No, you're welcome.
Okay, I may add that for the Ukraine, I would see it through the Ukraine issues or problems. Of course, for me, first of all, of creation in the fintech services, which will be seamless, which will work for user friendly without additional need to go somewhere. Especially it's for rural areas and for entrepreneurs, which are I don't know, counting time. First, don't have the possibility. Second, counting each minute for that processes which are going to be waste. As for me, it's again about distance identification. It's again about creation of seamless processes which allow customer to or clients to have these fintech services on the way, just like this, and without any difficult processes which are right now in the banking very often. Second, that would add the big data and all around it. Unfortunately, as I see, only few companies in Ukraine market use it with some effect, yeah, because a lot of them have a huge data, but they seems to be, as for me, I don't want to say it's such a word, but it looks like stupid things. They are losing customers so on just because they don't know how to use it, or maybe they are not thinking in that way. Yes, and third is if we are talking about new paradigm of life, which is everything in distance and so on, in e-commerce, in this Internet of Things, of course, there should be burned some kind of crypto assets things for payments like CBDC or something like this, which is not topic of today's discussion. But anyway, we goes to the new era of digital services with digital money. It's my personal opinion. So this is three also things in which I believe will be developed here in Ukraine soon. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, John.
Yeah, data, big data sort of things and AI would be included in that. How do you really take these huge amounts of data and make them move around and make them useful? Cybersecurity is another one. If I had to pick a third one, I think to be a bit more ambitious, the idea of more platforms or businesses that can connect these dots, because I think it's great to serve individual pieces and perhaps everything is really decentralized. But I think at a certain point, there's an opportunity to really reconsolidate all that. And that's traditionally how this sort of disruptive phase between eras has gone on. So I'm interested in that, especially from the perspective of Switzerland, where I think we have a really strong case to be sort of a hub for infrastructure in the digital economy. And actually one newer one that I don't think gets talked a lot about, but I like to throw out there is quantum computing. And again, how does that perhaps change the world that we know in ways that most of us don't properly understand? So that's an interesting one to look out for.
Thanks for sharing. So let's connect our ecosystem, the Switzerland and Ukraine as well. You have the strong and developed ecosystem. We also have a lot of companies and also the R&Ds of great companies like Wirex, for example. And I'll take the last one question, and I suggest to stop briefly on it. It arrived from Annabella. She asks that, as we see in the Ukrainian fintech strategy, there is special place for e-grivnya, electronic grivna, which is the national currency of country, the CBDC, but how the national bank is going to maintain demand for this payment instrument and make it convenient for users. I see that Jean-Francois is going to answer this question live, and also the comments from Serhii will be welcome, and from all of you, of course.
Yes, I'm very pleased to see this question, because since maybe the last 10 years, I have been an advocate for central banks of the world to create digital currencies based on their existing national currencies. I do not believe that digital currencies should be, artificial currencies, because I do not believe that banks are evil. I think banks, and especially the central banks, are the legitimate representatives of the people, of the nations, and I believe that they should embrace the digital revolution and make currency transition to the 21st century, where, of course, everybody born after the year 2000 doesn't understand why we have to, print special pieces of paper to exchange. So, and I believe our friend at the Ukrainian Central Bank, Serhii, shares this opinion, and I'd be curious to hear his views on the development of the e-grivnya.
Okay, so I would say that we have still discussion inside of NBU. We have a work group, which consists, of course, of technicals, methodologists, lawyers, and people who do payments all their life, like me, for example. So we are thinking about, yes, how to create the product which will have success on the market to be used by the both companies and personal individuals, and also will be like have a lot of benefits for the state. So we are thinking a lot, and right now on finalization stage before to go to the board. After that, we will show the our official position. But I can take a small like explanation what we see and how to do it. Of course, yeah, grivna is the it could be the part of this digital society, the new digital society with the new digital financial services paradigm, together with our colleagues from Minister of the Digital Transformation from Cabinet of Ministries. We can add it together and join to the platform of this country in smartphone, with the possibility to do whole life cycle for the people who can receive money on that wallet, and who can spend this money from this wallet everywhere, and so on and so on. So of course, as usual, in such difficult innovative projects, there is a lot of things about who goes first, chicken or egg. But again, with the experience of previous kind of difficult innovative projects, I may say that of course those who goes the way will pass the way. So we will need to, of course, see and think about a lot of complex components. But in the end, I see that the possibility how to create this digital ecosystem using new kind of digital money, not, as you said, not the papers and not the traditional, I would say, traditional things like payment system or payment systems or banking accounts. So it will be kind of the new in the Internet of Things. It's my idea for more than 4 years. So, but I think right now we are on the stage when we see the possibility of use it together with Cabinet of Minister from one point of view, and from another point of view, we see that technology is ready right now, because 4 years ago it was too early for us. We were like dreamers in the eyes of our colleagues. We were just like a cosmonaut, or I don't know, astronauts. But right now I see that there is a readiness both from the market and international experts that see the future in this, and from the other side we see that from the technology side there is such solution already on the market, which goes with our requirement as a regulator, of course. John?
Yes, I want to add something. You made a very important point, Serhii, that if we move to digital, if we move currency to digital, especially in countries where most retail payments are still made in cash, which is the case in Ukraine, it is important that we don't move to digital also the inefficiencies of the current, let's say, electronic payment systems, which are essentially based on the card services. And the card services have an architecture that was thought that made sense in the 70s and 80s, but it makes absolutely no sense in the 2020s. Of course, there was no internet at that time, and only banks had access to digital technology, and they had a very secure network among the banks. It is still good to have that for interbank transaction, but the general public should absolutely have super light protocols that would bring transaction costs to near zero and keep it even safer than what you do when you use a card. So these are very, very important criteria if you want to jump across a generation and be really a pioneer and a leader in the digital payment world.
Yeah, I would agree. We are thinking not only about how to make it popular, or how people will use it and companies, but also again about architecture and the security stuff. As I mentioned, it's a complex, yes, a lot of components inside of this project. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. As we're running out of time, we will take a last question briefly. How do you think will fintech companies such as Wirex provide an infrastructure for CBDC? I think it's a question for Ruslan, ideally.
Yeah, for me and Serhii, I think I just want to like extend or describe the question more precisely, maybe for context, for having the context for everyone. I think the question is because this CBDC is a cryptocurrency, let's say it like that. And right now we see the case that banks and some central banks, they're kind of afraid this word, actually cryptocurrency. And applying the regulatory approach to CBDC, it can mean that this approach could be applied for stable coins, which what CBDC is. They can bake it cryptocurrency with real fiat money that can be run with private companies, which we see as Libra does. And here in Wirex, we developed stable coins, I think 2 years ago, and looking forward to apply that product across the world as well. And that's maybe one of the biggest challenges for regulatory environment to handle that.
Thank you. Are there any add-ons?
I would say about legal field, as I mentioned before, our colleagues from Ministry of Digital Transformation prepared this document, and right now it's in the Parliament. So you can, I don't remember right now the number of the document, but you can see it and check up what will be inside of it. Fortunately or not, they are planning to be the regulator of this virtual active. So let's see and let wish them success.
Yeah. Thank you. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, like a lot. If there is one short last thing that you wanted to add, but I didn't give you the chance to do it, this is your chance.
Maybe a quick one for me. I think it's a great spirit I always find here with our Ukrainian colleagues. And we heard it tons of times from everybody else, really the spirit of virtual teams, collaboration, starting with the team first and then going out to find a jurisdiction and a market that you want to pursue. So yeah, just continue to follow that and think of us in Switzerland, wherever you may be, and we'd be happy to talk to you.
Yeah, and when the borders are open, we're waiting for you in Ukraine.
Waiting for the invite. Looking forward to being back. Thank you.
Super. You have never been, right?
There was a near miss, I think, a couple of years ago to be for a conference. But yeah, looking forward to getting back again, or getting there finally.
Okay, great. So Jean-Francois, John, we're waiting for you in Ukraine. Once the borders are open, we will figure out what to do here. Maybe together with the National Bank and the Wirex.
Actually, sorry, that's what I really wanted to mention. Your colleague, the new head of the central bank, there was great news yesterday about a Swiss company that actually did not do as well at that first Swiss fintech pitch as Mobino did. It's called Metaco, and they've just had a very big financing round. And what they do is put that technology into banknotes so that the bridge to digital currency can be made. So if you're looking at that or want to find some examples of how it could be done, check out Metaco from Switzerland.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and actually, while we're on that theme, I wanted to emphasize that Switzerland is discreet, but is currently the world leader in banknote printing technology. Both the printing presses and the special inks and the special papers and the holograms and a lot of the security features, all made by small Swiss companies. Yeah. We do great banknotes. But that's not the future. That's not the future, okay? Stop the banknotes. Go digital.
I feel a lot of synergy now between our countries. Okay, unfortunately, we have to finish because we really went out of time. Thank you, John, Ruslan, Jean-Francois, and Serhii for this discussion. Thank you for your time. It was very interesting to chat to you, and I'm glad to see you. Some of you glad to see you again. I would like to thank also to Wirex, who's our partner for this event. It was a pleasure to work and to prepare. And see you next time. If you will have questions, you can write in the comments under this video on social media. And see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Olga. Thank you to the team.
Thanks,
Bye, guys.
Olga.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye,
Thank you,
guys.
Olga. Lots of energy, moderation. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Nice to see you, Jean.
Bye.
See you next